My last few days have been pretty busy with my new job and everything else that's going on in my life right now. So doing the Artist's Way challenge has already proven to be a good idea because I can feel myself getting reminded of taking care of myself and my creativity and like taking breaks and everything else. I've just finished going through my notes from week 1, and it's already really interesting to see what just a few small exercises and, more importantly, giving yourself the time and space to actually nurture your own creativity can do for you. Like, just reading the pages in the book has led me to some realizations about myself, my art, and my creativity, and I hope I'll get to like properly process those in the next upcoming weeks. Probably the most important thing that helped me to be kinder to myself is that the author talks about your inner artistic child, which is basically the part of yourself that has this childlike wonder and sense of play and everything, which plays a huge role in your own creativity. And thinking about my own creativity as like an actual child or whatever, instead of myself as a person, it was so much easier to recognize and take care of my own needs, like artistically, but like also just generally, like taking breaks and stuff. Because an inner child, or like a child in general, doesn't have to think about being productive or work or anything while you're trying to take a break. A child thinks about taking a nap because it's tired, or wanting to read a book because it's curious about what happens next in the story, instead of trying to analyze the story to be able to write better stories itself. So yeah, I'd say so far I'm pretty happy with how the Artist's Way is going. This exercise made me way more open / comfortable with the next exercise that the book lets you do, which is to write down your own affirmations. And then you're supposed to read them to yourself every morning after your morning pages. And I'm not a big fan of affirmations, I'm gonna be honest with you. Obviously a big part of it is my brain doesn't want to process the fact that I could view myself as a productive and outstanding artist. And that was just an example sentence given by the book. If I write my own affirmations, that's probably gonna be even more triggering for the inner critic. I mean, the book also provides you with a list of examples for affirmations where you can also write down the ones that feel right for you or the one that makes you especially uncomfortable out of the list, because those are mostly the ones, you know, that trigger your inner critic, the ones that you have to work on, I guess. However, since I did the other exercise first, I decided to use the bullet points I wrote down about, you know, what my inner critic told myself, and build affirmations based on that. And on the one hand, it made it easier. On the other hand, it made me cringe so much harder while writing these down. I don't know, it's hard to describe. I can feel myself, you know, cringing and everything, but at the same time, I know that the cringe is what shows how effective this exercise is and how helpful it would probably be to actually read those sentences every day to, you know, get used to them. They're just not gonna be a comfortable process, but oh well. No one said this was gonna be easy. In fact, the book itself said that parts of this book are not gonna be easy, so nice. To be honest, a big chunk of week 1 is actively being aware of what blocks your creativity, and a lot of this has to do with negative core beliefs, but also with your own past. And the second exercise I did was related to that exact thing, because the goal was to write down different past enemies of your creative self-worth, which could be anyone or anything that had a negative impact on your self-worth as a creative person. And let me tell you, being aware of some of my traumata and uncomfortable experiences doesn't make it more comfortable. Especially because the second part is actually writing down one of those situations, and I did not like that. But I do see the value in it, so whatever, it's fine. Funny enough, I wrote down a situation from my past, but the situation I kept coming back to mentally the next few days was a whole different one. Like, the situation would randomly pop up in my mind, and I thought it was more of a haha, that was such a funny, stupid situation back then kind of thing. But now that I think about it a bit longer, I guess it still plays some kind of role in how I see my skills and my art in general today. Like, the situation was, I don't know, man, basically just a few sentences I got from a girl who was friends with a friend of mine in like 6th grade or something. And I didn't even really like this girl, so it's not like her opinion was particularly important to me or anything. This was also way before I even knew you could draw for a living, so I had always just drawn for fun and boredom, but I still wanted to improve, and at that point in time, I had never really drawn boys or men, so I wanted to try that out. Mind you, I was like 12 at the time, so my skills in general were nothing to write home about, and starting to draw something I knew I wouldn't be good at was already kind of intimidating. So I did what I did a lot back then and just studied other artists' works and basically turned the characters from the original art into my UCs to not just copy the original picture. Overall, a very smart way to improve, actually. And I remember that one artist I really liked was Uenotsuki, who did a lot of Kagamina Len artworks. Back then I used a lot of their Len arts as reference, but I didn't even know they were all by the same creator. But yeah, Kagamina Len isn't exactly the most masculine character, and Uenotsuki's art is very much what people think of when they think of anime art, like with big eyes and tiny noses and everything. So I was sitting at my table during a break, just drawing the sketch and thinking about which elements to change to make this character my own and how to improve, when suddenly I hear this girl leaning over me from the side, just saying out of nowhere, "The scarf looks gay." And like, what was I supposed to say to that? And this was in the early 2010s, when gay was used as an insult even more frequently than today, and I knew she was not using that word in a positive or even neutral way. So all of a sudden, I felt so bad and embarrassed over the fact that this random scarf I thought would look fun apparently looked gay, that I just didn't know how to respond. And I think she asked me something after that or whatever and then left. So it's not even like she wanted to start a conversation or something, she just stated that and left. But this, I don't know, 2-minute interaction made me feel so embarrassed somehow that I stopped drawing right after she had left, and apparently I'm still thinking about this more than a decade after. And I mean, if someone would say something like that today, I'd just reply with a hell yeah, it's gay, because most of the things I draw today are queer in one way or another, and I still prefer drawing rather feminine features on men over very masculine ones, if you want to call it that. And I know that a random scarf sure as hell doesn't make anyone gay or straight or whatever. However, I still do view my skills in drawing adult male characters in general as way lower than any other kind of character type, and also way lower than they actually are, I think. And that's the part I guess I need to work on. Like, drawing super masculine beefcake men will probably never bring me as much joy as drawing dorky pretty boys with long hair, but I can draw masculine men if I want to. Just because I don't draw like 90s DC comic book artists doesn't mean my male characters don't look like men. Like, for example, I purposely chose to draw a masculine adult character design as part of my bachelor project and my future portfolio, so I technically know I can draw men that are recognized as such, but yeah, still so much to unpack or whatever. And to be entirely honest right now, I'm not sure what to do with this revelation. Like, that this random situation from 10 plus years ago is still stuck in my mind. But I guess being aware of it is already a big step forward. At least I hope so.
Luckily, not all exercises are as painful as the affirmation ones. In summary, the first week is all about figuring out what made you clam up and lose the connection to your own creativity, but also what or who did support and motivate you in the past and being aware of those things. My favorite exercise about this, and also in general, was the imaginary lives exercise. The first step is to write down 5 jobs you might be doing in another life, no matter how suited your actual skills are for that kind of job in this life. I personally look back at my childhood dream jobs from before I understood that most of these would not be the best fit for me personally. One of those jobs was to become a novel author, and man, I still love coming up with stories, but actually writing a big number of sentences that don't all start with and then is the skill I still have to acquire. However, I did use this job for the next part of this exercise, which was to take a job and integrate it into your week. And in my case, I didn't just choose any kind of novel author, but I chose to take my travel diary from my Italy trip last year and edit one of those situations into a proper paragraph, like the ones you would find in a travel report book. For this, I decided to sit down in a quiet corner of my garden and write there, which is something I had never done before. However, I plan on doing it again in the future because it was such a nice change of scenery and it was very easy to concentrate. Also, it's just a pretty nice spot in the garden, to be honest. This also helped me so much with the exercise itself, because right before I started, I was actually not in the mood to write at all, but I had a promise to keep to the book, so I just told myself I would sit down for a few minutes, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It worked wonderfully, however, and I caught myself smiling multiple times while rereading my diary to pick a situation to write about. There might have been a few tears in my eyes as well, but that's just between me and this diary or whatever. Just sitting there and thinking about this trip, which had been a childhood dream of mine, made me very happy and just overall feel good and way less stressed than before. It made me want to draw studies of the photos I took, and I don't know if I'll end up actually doing that because of time reasons, but the thought alone already felt super good and creatively fulfilling. I also didn't even write that much because I felt like I had to process the memories of the stuff I wrote so far first, but it was such a nice feeling to just write a bit of a travel diary blog entry thingy, even if I don't plan on publishing it anywhere. Just writing that bit was enough, and writing in general makes more and more fun right now. Also, it made me think of traveling again, and oh my god, that gives me so much energy and motivation for the struggles and little to-do things I have to manage in my daily life. This brings us to the end of week 1 already, and the check-ins you're supposed to do after every chapter, where you basically review the last few days. I tried doing as many exercises as I could, but stopped at doing 8 out of 10, because I noticed with the last ones that I started to just try and get them over with because the week was ending. But that doesn't help at all, so I decided to not do the last ones instead. To be fair, those were also the ones I felt the most neutral about, so neither excited like the imaginary life one or defensive like the past enemy ones. So I think the ones I did do were more important for me to do in that current moment. I'll probably still try to do the others in the future, but it feels more like a win for me to call it quits right now instead of forcing myself through, especially since knowing when to stop is still something I'm trying to learn myself. As for the morning pages, I've already mentioned that I've done a shorter version of this for months, which is probably why I didn't have that many new revelations. However, they still help me to get my head sorted out every morning instead of throwing myself into my to-do list without a plan. And yes, even though I plan my to-dos for the next day every evening, the morning pages still help me a whole lot to actually get them started with a plan and reason. They especially helped me when I had problems and decisions to make which overwhelmed me. It's just like talking it out with a friend, but instead you talk it out with yourself. And in some cases, that's even better than talking to a friend who inadvertently brings in their own opinions into the mix. I do have to admit that 2 A4 pages might be a bit too much for me on some days. It's roughly double as much as I usually write, and at one point I always get to the point where my thoughts are just running in circles around the things I already wrote. So I will keep trying to write 2 pages for now, because I might just need to get used to it, and on the days where I actually do unearth something, I sure do need that space, but that's kind of rare, not gonna lie. So we will see what happens in the future with the morning pages and me. Something that was new to me are the artist states. Not so much the part where I do things by myself, because that's something I've enjoyed doing since forever, but I rarely treat myself to cool things just for fun. I already talked about it a little bit in the beginning of this video, but the book helps me a lot in giving myself the permission to do things without thinking about how they might be productive. So for this week I decided to go to the cinema again for the first time in ages, to watch Deadpool and Wolverine. And man, I'm glad I did. Seeing movies on the big screen is a whole other experience than at home. It helped me to forget my stress of the daily life for like 2 hours, and that also feels like a mini holiday. I do try to take breaks regularly over the day and week, but it's so much easier to actually remove yourself from the stress in the cinema over like working out at home or reading in bed. Also, since I was waiting roughly 20 minutes for the movie to start, I started scribbling the room around me, and I hadn't done those loose sketches in ages either. It feels like the start of getting back in touch with sketching for fun and relaxation, not gonna lie. The sketches themselves really aren't anything impressive, but just the act of drawing them was worth it, and I didn't even care about the outcome while drawing. I was just having fun. As for the movie itself, it was also fun. Like, there were a lot of things I loved, like the character dynamic between Deadpool and Wolverine. And yes, they got it on in that Honda Odyssey. There were also other things that really didn't speak to me, like the way the movie handled the villains or whatever. But for my inspiration, it was perfect. It was good enough to catch and keep my interest, but there are also things I would have liked to be different, and that just triggers my creativity in a very specific way. Like, the things I would have changed in the story can serve as inspiration in my own stories, for example. And since I also really like the character dynamics between Deadpool and Wolverine in this, it also inspired me to draw them, and oh my god, I had a lot of fun with this. This was the first time in a while that I just felt the absolute joy of having a random sketch idea and just being able to have fun with it, without being too focused on a good outcome because it's for a grade or whatever. That alone was absolutely worth the money I spent on the movie ticket. I've known that it's important to do things that refill your creative batteries for I don't know how long, but the responsibility I feel about the book and following the exercises in it is what's giving me the discipline to actually do those things in a way the book suggests. And with those experiences, I learned that it actually is important to do those creative input things and in a way that actually helps me recharge. So hopefully those experiences will help me keeping that habit up even after I finish the book. Usually when I try these kinds of recharging things, I feel guilty for not working, even though I know that's stupid. But with this book, I don't feel like the artist dates aren't part of my working process, so I don't feel bad, and that's really nice. I hope this little insight in my work with the Artist Way book is helpful to you guys and that you can take some of the lessons I learned and integrate them into your own life. Personally, I'm pretty excited to start with the next chapter of this book, but I'm also a bit nervous, to be honest. The day I'm writing this is the last day before I start my new part-time job, and on the one hand I'm super excited, but on the other I'm also very nervous. Also about my time management, and especially in relation to the Artist Way. Working with this book definitely falls under self-care for me, and based on past experiences I can say that self-care is usually the first thing to go when I'm getting too stressed and fall back into my old workaholic mode. However, that just means that I need to be even more mindful of how I'm feeling the next few days and potentially press pause on some freelance and personal projects that don't have a tight deadline until I've gotten used to the new 9 to 5. But we'll see how that will work out for me in the next video. So I hope I'll see you again, and bye bye!